What's up, Dragon Brood? So today we want to just talk about this upcoming announcement from Wizards of the Coast. For those of you that don't know, they put up this announcement, which basically says they're watching what's going on with Standard. They didn't want to mess with anything this weekend, so we'll see where things are come Monday. Now, that being said, what does that mean? Well, we don't really know. I think there's a lot of speculation that some type of banning is coming. Some people are saying, well, maybe, who knows? Actually, you know what? Let's go through some options here. And let's just talk through them one by one. So option one, they don't ban anything. I know, that sounds crazy, but hear me out. If the results had been what they thought they were going to be, maybe internally, I don't know, there was a chance, and this is what I would put at like the 1% chance, that they would have just banned nothing. That, okay, maybe we saw a top 16 where there were like 8 Omnath decks, but there were other things hanging out. We'll just let it play out another 2 weeks before we make a decision. Unfortunately, that didn't really happen, and we saw something like 14 decks in the top 16 were all some version of Omnath, Ramp, whatever. So there's a good chance that this just isn't going to happen. Like, if they didn't, I would assume they would use that time to go ahead and say, hey, here's how we're going to do stuff in the future. Here's what we're looking at. Here's what we're following. But like I said, the odds are too strong after this weekend's events that any such thing is going to happen. So of all the options I'm going to present, this one's probably the weakest. Now, option 2 is kind of interesting. We ban Escape to the Wilds and Genesis Ultimatum. Now, I know people look and say, yeah, but what about Uro? Well, at this step, let's just consider something like Uro is a good card, Omnath is a good card. However, if we take away the things that actually just make them insane, maybe this is a viable option. I mean, ask most people when they're trying to combat these 4-color Omnath decks what the problem is. And they'll usually tell you, well, I control all these things, but then they just draw an ultimatum and then the game's just over, right? You get 3 or 4 free things and then you can't keep up. So what if those didn't exist? Then what are the decks doing? Just ramping to some big creature? Maybe a big enchantment? Those are much easier to deal with than like 3 or 4 things at once. Now, I don't know what I put the odds of this one at. Maybe somewhere in the like 5 or 6% range. Definitely lower than other things that we're going to present here, but I do think it's at least worth entertaining. Okay, option 3, we're going to call this the nuclear option. And this is just rip the band-aid off of every damn thing and go for it. So, you know, things like Uro, Omnath, Genesis Ultimatum, Clover, Embercleave, Winota, right? All of the big over-the-top things that players hate right now. You just say, know what? We're going to just please everybody right now. Nobody's playing paper anyway. Let's just ban all these things. You get all the wild cards back. We get everybody back to playing Magic, enjoying Standard again. All decks are viable. That actually doesn't sound that bad to me, really. Like, don't get me wrong. Y'all know I'm a big fan of Embercleave. But really, overall, that sounds pretty good, right? Just say, like, everything that's a big over-the-top problem or cards that are leading to other cards being banned or whatever, let's just say, cool, we don't want to have to worry about these anymore, because if we leave them around, maybe we'll just be worrying about them again in 3 months, right? We look down the road and say, well, look at this set that's coming. Well, hopefully those cards interact favorably with these other cards that we already know are problems. Yeah, that's probably not going to be the thing. So if they decided to cut out, I don't know how many cards it is. Maybe it's like 8, maybe it's 10. But just say, hey, we're just going to give all these. We're going to take the knees out of all of them. And then we get to start fresh Monday afternoon. I don't hate it. I don't know what the odds are they would do that, but I'm not against it. And I think it's actually reasonable that they might. Because if nothing else, think about this. Think about being there at Wizards, being an R&D or whatever, play design, or any team in the building. Hell, maybe even PR at this point. Like, just dealing with that probably just solves so many options and problems right off the bat. Just saying, like, hey, we know these keep popping up. We keep seeing emails about it. Oh, yeah. Add Ugin to that list for sure. Get that effer out of here. Let's move on to the next option. This one's an option I hate. but we're gonna say option 4. I think it's 4. I'll have to correct it post if not. You ban Omnath Only. And though it's the problem card and it's the biggest card, the problem is just that like that doesn't do enough. Like sure you get rid of Omnath, but there's still Uro, there's still the Escape to the Wilds, there's still Genesis Ultimatum. You know, like it's just gonna be something else. Like we are still gonna find ways to play those cards in other decks that are gonna be annoying and problematic. And to some extent, even something like Uro is somewhat manageable, but the truth is, and I know people hate hearing this, but on some level, if a card creates enough negative feelings that it drives away people from participating in your game or in events or playing in ladder or whatever it is, that's a problem. And yeah, I know some of you are going to listen to this and say, well, you know, the crybabies and the snowflakes and blah, you know what? Like maybe they are upset over nothing and maybe whatever. But the truth is, at the end of the day, it's a business. And if it's driving people away and it has that many negative undertones, it may just have to go. Don't know how you feel about, like I said, maybe, maybe not, but I don't think this is a realistic situation. I think if something gets banned, it has to be more than just Omnath. Maybe it's not Omnath at all, but Omnath alone is not the option. Which brings me to option 5, which is Omnath and something. Maybe it's Omnath and Uro. Maybe it's Omnath and Ultimatum. But I think that is a reasonably likely scenario. It seems like at times Wizards has been very reluctant to ban multiple things at once or remove them from a format or put them on a spin list, whatever you want to do. They seem to only want to do 1 or 2 cards at a time here or there. So the idea of having to just ban 2 cards, maybe 3, actually seems kind of reasonable based on history. Now, I'm a big fan of, you know, maybe if it's Omnath, Escape to the Wilds, Ultimatum, maybe, you know, Uro, probably, but I'm not sure what that looks like beyond that. I know this is kind of similar to the other option, but this is being more specific that we're not just getting rid of everything, we're mostly targeting the top deck here. But I'm not sure if that solves problems for the future, which is a whole different issue. However, be aware that Escape to the Wilds actually is played in another big deck with Lucky Clover, so maybe it's got to go too. Option 6 is actually one of the more interesting ones to me. And I'm okay mentioning this because I'm pretty sure I saw Rosewater post like something about this like close to a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. But there was a point when I was at Wizards that the option was discussed that what if instead of banning something at some point in time in the future, if there's a problem, you basically make a card newly legal to the format. Likely something that's already a common or an uncommon that already has plenty of copies in the world. But let's say for some reason we decided, I don't know, Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshare. Maybe Path to Exile because there's more in the world of those, right? Let's say maybe that needs to exist to be able to deal easily with Omnath. Or maybe they've discovered that some decks that play white, like say Selesnya tokens or something, is one step away from being able to be competitive against Omnath, but it needs a good removal card. So they decide on Path to Exile. You just make that magically available. People can start playing with it. I assume you would have to code it and put it on Arena and maybe mail. I think you have a plan to mail like 20 or 30 copies out to each store so they can give some to customers for whatever reason, right? So now everybody can play with this and solve the problem. And truthfully, it's even easier now because you don't even have that many people going to stores anymore because of the whole pandemic. So maybe you just have to make it legal on Arena for the short term and then you have plenty of time to get it to stores later. That's not a bad thing. Now, I'm not saying it needs to be Path to Exile. Maybe it's some other card. I don't know. Maybe they for some reason think it's Lightning Bolt. Whatever. But the option is really intriguing. I haven't put enough thought into figuring out what that card would even be at this point, but I think it's cool that we could do it and we could at least talk about it because it seems like it could be a reasonable option. Now, what is the likelihood? I don't know. This would be the first time it'd be implemented, but to be fair, we're in a pandemic. Most of us are playing online, and this has been the most I can remember seeing a deck dominate a tournament in a long, or a whole weekend, not even just a tournament, just every event online this weekend for a very long time. So maybe if there is a time, this would be the time to try it out. Now, all that being said, what do I think is likely to happen? I think we're probably going to be somewhere in removing like 4 cards. And honestly, I think that could be okay. If I were making a list right now, it's probably Omnath, Uro, Escape to the Wilds, Genesis Ultimatum, which sadly, I'd like that list to include Ugin and Lucky Clover as well. That would be, for me, if we get rid of those 6, then we can have a talk about Winota and Embercleave. Though I do feel like when you can keep creatures under control, those become less of a problem, but they are still both very powerful. So I don't know, maybe they need to be on the list and it needs to be 8 things as well. But either way, something has to happen. But I want to hear from y'all. Y'all tell me down below in the comments what you think the best option is for this to go with. And maybe even do this. Tell me what you would like as your best option to happen and what you think Wizards is going to do. And then we'll address this on Monday after the announcement comes out and see kind of how the community voted. Because this is very interesting and I think it's kind of a unique situation. Mostly because, like I said, we're in the pandemic. We have a bunch of stuff happening online. It's easy to make changes into Magic Arena this early in the season. And people haven't gone out and invested a ton of cards or money buying the cards for the new standard yet. So let's see what happens. Remember, if you haven't, please like this video to help us get in front of more people. Hit that subscribe button so I know that you love me, and then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I have a video up, which right now is every day. I haven't missed a day since February. And don't forget, you can also join my Discord. You can buy merchandise. You can find my podcast, everything down in the description below. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.